It's kind of like, back in the day, me and you, when we were younger, you're like, I'm going to slap you so hard that your kid will feel it. Your grandson going to feel it. And you were like 10, right?
Yeah.
Slap you.
You're listening to the Help Me with HIPAA podcast, where HIPAA and humor collide to make learning fun. Your delightful hosts are Donna Grindle and David Sims. Relax. HIPAA help is on the way.
Welcome to episode 381 of the Help Me with HIPAA podcast. My name is David Sims of HIPAA for MSPs. Joining me is Donna Grindle of Carden. Good afternoon, Donna.
I think we've pushed into the evening when we.
Good evening. As we're recording this, it's Halloween, so.
Oh, that's right.
It's very fitting. Good evening.
Well, I think it's the evening has hit us, so we've got to get this thing done.
Yeah. Yep. So today we're going to be talking about non-incident response procedures and what you can do to respond properly. Because guess what? Calling IT ain't one of them.
I know, right? Well, that's not a plan anyway.
Yeah, you're right.
So many people, what's your plan? Oh, I'll call you. I appreciate the confidence. However.
Yeah, you might want to have a little bit more than that.
Yeah, it's highly recommended. In fact, it should be considered seriously based on the OCR October Newsletter, which said you should consider these things.
Yeah. I think I'm going to change the name of my IT business to Plan B.
There you go.
It seems to be what people would do anyway. It's like, oh, this ain't working. Call IT.
Yeah. We're getting a lot of that around here. Like after we've had a breach, now I'm super interested in doing work with you.
Yeah, that's how it always works.
Isn't it?
Yeah, it's unfortunate. But anyway, for those of you who are very interested in doing the right thing, knowing how to do it properly, and just having a killer privacy and security program, we have a boot camp for that.
Yes, we do. You should come to the PriceSec Boot Camp.
March 12, 13, 14, and 15 of 2023. So actually just a few months away.
No, that'll creep up on us.
Not long at all. But you can find out more at PriceSecBootCamp.com. Seating is limited, and so is Donna's patience.
Yes, it is. As a matter of fact. Yeah.
All right. If you want to find Donna, you can find her at CardenHQ.com. Myself, HIPAA for MSPs.com. Thanks to our donors. We appreciate it. And let's jump into something that is a little bit jaw-dropping in our HIPAA Say What segment.
HIPAA Say What? You got to get a button for that, David.
I know, man. I know.
I miss it. Either go back to your other recording studio or move that down here. Okay.
Yeah. So I'm looking through my email earlier today, and anytime you see an email that starts with ding dong,
David's in.
I'm like, all right, what are we talking about here? I mean, it could be doorbells, it could be snack cakes, it could be bad. I don't know, but the next part was very interesting when it said the FTC has looked at the Drizzly data breach. Now, not that I'm going to point out the fact that ding dong and Drizzly are in the same sentence, but Drizzly data breach settlement will follow the CEO personally for a decade.
Then you were really interested.
I'm like, what? So what? Follow the CEO? What, a decade? Wow. So I cracked that open, and it doesn't take long. The first paragraph reads, the FTC announced on Monday it's settling a case against Drizzly and its CEO. Get it? Drizzly and its CEO.
Two very important things, yes.
Yeah. Stemming from a 2020 data breach that impacted roughly 2.5 million consumers, the proposed order not only contains a laundry list of security-related obligations for the company that spans 20 years.
20
yes,
years.
a 20-year corrective action plan, but
Yeah.
also names and targets its CEO, James Corey Rellis, personally. Names him personally, hitting him with obligations that will follow him for a decade, even if he moves to another organization. There are also hints that the FTC intends to elevate information security issues to boards of directors and other top-level executives. Let that sink in.
A little bit.
I mean, ding dong.
And everybody complains about HIPAA enforcement.
The first thing was what? The 20-year corrective action plan. I mean, that's what I'm calling it. That's not what they're calling it.
Right. It is what it is. That's what it is, though.
Security-related obligations, SROs.
Yes.
So security for 20 years. Okay, I get that. Okay. But it follows the CEO even if he leaves the company? I'm like, what?
Yeah. And so it's like they are finally, I saw a discussion about having just, penalties. They just stroke a check and keep moving.
Mm-hmm.
But you hit them where it's on them personally. We're going to see different approaches long term. And for all of you who go, well, I'm not regulated by the FTC. Okay, but if you do business with someone that is, just know we've been telling you this is coming.
Mm-hmm.
And they point out that specifically, Rellis, I don't know how he pronounces it, will be required to implement an information security program at future companies if he moves to a business collecting consumer information from more than 25,000 individuals where he is a majority owner, CEO, or senior officer with information security responsibilities.
Wow.
So that's going to limit where he can get hired. So
the other part that was, interesting was the FTC intends to elevate information security issues to boards of directors. I mean,
owners, boards of directors, they're going to start having to pay attention because they're going to bring it up.
Yeah.
And when they lock it down and say, if we see your name on any documents, we could be brought in. So, but here are the things that they got them for, which are all things that I'd like to make note of are required under HIPAA. So for those of you under HIPAA that aren't doing these things, might want to really get to thinking about it. Failed to implement basic security measures. Well, we've heard that before, including not training their employee, not having written security policies. Wait, I've heard of this before. Stored critical database information on an unsecured platform. Neglected to monitor network for security threats. And exposed consumers to hacker and identity thieves.
How about that?
So basically, they're going to have to do all these things, but 20 years, you better make sure you're staying on top of things and obtain biennial security assessments. So that they're going to be, but that personally targeting the CEO, that part got your attention?
Yeah. I mean, I'm waiting on the next one to come up and say, we're going to hold your son liable for cybersecurity. It's kind of like, back in the day, me and you, when we were younger, you like, I'm going to slap you so hard that your kid will feel it. Your grandson going to feel it. And you were like 10, right?
Yeah.
Slap you. Man, that's something. So let's look at these 9 incident response procedures, because if you're doing the documentation right and you have a security program in place, one thing I hope that you also have is proper procedures for responding to an incident.
Yes, because that would prove that you're actually running a proper program.
Yes. Man, say that fast. Prove proper programs. All right.
Our whole new PPP. Anyway, so this comes from the October 2022 OCR Cybersecurity Newsletter. Did you know they had them? You can sign up for them.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of stuff in here that is all very good and helpful. We're going to focus just on the procedures you should consider, quote unquote.
Mm-hmm.
I always like that. But there were a few little things before we got down in there that was in the newsletter I wanted to point out that they lead with on why this is important. 74% of the breaches reported to OCR in 2021 involved hacking and IT incidents. Let that sit for a minute. Those are just the ones reported for over 500.
Yeah.
I'm aware of ones I know of that were under 500 that involved hacking and IT incidents.
Mm-hmm. And I'm aware of some over 500 that never got reported.
Oh, that's a whole rabbit hole we're not going to go down. But it also points out that it is in the healthcare sector, hacking is now the greatest threat to the privacy and security of PHI. A timely response to cybersecurity incident is one of the best ways to prevent, mitigate, and recover from cyber attacks. We've said that over and over, haven't we?
Mm-hmm.
It shows up in the monetary studies of what makes them more expensive and all of these things. So, I mean, they're spot on the importance, but we're going to focus on, and it literally says these are the procedures that entities, quote, should consider including in the incident procedures because they will never tell you exactly what you should have.
Right.
But they will tell you what you should consider including. And what does that mean? It's kind of like, if I were you, I would do this.
Mm-hmm. Or as one of my kids would say, well, you didn't say I had to.
I knew that's where you go with it. You didn't say I had to do that. You just said, if I were you, you should do that.
Yeah, you just said it would be a good idea not to drive without a license. You didn't say, don't do it. Those of you with kids will know.
Yeah. That goes back to you wish you were young enough to go, I wish I could slap you hard enough to, yes, make your teeth rattle or any of those things. But I digress. The important thing, though, is they're telling you should consider something. Then they're telling you these are the 9 things that you should consider. Wink, wink.
Yeah.
So they include, though, they say, in this document, again, I encourage you to read the whole thing, which, of course, we'll have a link to. But they make sure that they say you got to have the steps to neutralize the threat, and mitigate the damage. But so many people think that is the incident response plan.
Mm-hmm.
That determine the nature and extent of the damage, identify, remove the code, figure out what's left behind, mitigate whatever caused the problem, preserve your data. Okay. But that's not all.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it when clients call and they'll say, fortunately, I don't have it very often because we have everything locked down pretty tight. But when they do have an incident, they call and, we've got this incident going on. Like, great, activate your incident response plan. And they go,
we're calling you.
Yeah. I am part of your incident response plan, not your incident response plan.
So that means that you could be part of item number 1, designate appropriate personnel, qualified internal resources, and or external third parties to be members of the response team.
Mm-hmm.
So you would be a member of the team as the IT guy, whoever that is, internal or external third parties. You are a member of the team. You are not the team.
Right. But
That's
I do want to remind everybody that, you don't always have to just call when things are going horribly awry. Call beforehand for things like, I'm adding a new employee. I'm considering adding new software or adding new hardware. Those are great times to call.
I'm setting up my incident response plan and would like to have a tabletop exercise.
Yeah. Wow. I don't know if I've heard that very often, but that'd be fantastic.
Yeah. Guess what? We're going to do that at PriceSec Boot Camp.
I know. I'm so looking forward to that.
Yeah. Real tabletop exercise. We're going to do our thing. It's exciting stuff. But designating that team, it's not like the one person that's in charge, because there's a lot more that you should have. So
you might want to let people know they're on the team too.
Yeah, there's that. Yeah, you were voluntold to be on the team right now as this thing's happening.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you'd be shocked how many times, well, you probably wouldn't, but how many times I ask people, like, do you have a privacy and security officer? And everybody's looking at each other and somebody goes, I think I might be it. I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm. Everybody looks at each other and points at each other.
Yeah. I'm like, okay.
Mm-hmm. That goes back to my 3 questions I can ask in any environment to find out how strong the privacy and security program is.
Mm-hmm.
3 questions. And it never fails. Every one of them works. Every person should be able to answer those 3 questions. And, well, we're just not going to share them right now.
See, so the PriceSec boot camp will tell you.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Or, send an email with the code. Come on, man. I'll know what it is. All right. So you have to have the team, but you need to understand that you need to build that list of who's going to need to be involved. And then these are the things that those people that are on the team need to handle. So you have to have a communication plan and contact information for not only notifying all members of the team that something's happened, but all the other folks. How many times have we heard of a disaster because you're not keeping your customers up to date? You're not informing your employees. You're not keeping your vendors in the loop. All of those things, you require a different communication plan for each of those, actually. And I don't know if most people recognize the importance of making sure that everybody knows what to do. I'm pretty sure that doesn't happen a lot.
Mm-mm.
Well, we've seen that in action, haven't we?
Unfortunately.
All right, what were we at? Where are we at? Number 3.
Number 3, processes to identify and determine the scope of security incidents.
Yes. So don't just assume, well, it only hit that web server and there's no PHI there, so we're fine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, just this one thing alone is where people are like, yeah, I'm calling IT.
Mm-hmm. Okay. But ask IT, what is their process? Make sure they actually have one.
Yeah. Well, having some understanding of how things are connected and what systems are functioning or not functioning. Because one of the worst things is when you don't have IT, like you don't have an MSP, you don't have internal IT, you just have, call me as you need me IT. Yeah. And then all of a sudden you call this company, and this has happened to us. They call and go, I'm in the middle of a ransomware attack. And I'm like, I know nothing about you, your environment, anything. I mean, I can come in and we can start, doing stuff, but you can't even tell me anything about your environment. So this whole process of identifying and determining the scope is going to be like trying to learn how to swim when somebody throws you in the middle of the ocean.
Yeah. All right. We'll keep up with you with a boat. Good luck now.
Yeah. So it would be good to have at the very minimum to understand how things are connected, have a network map maybe, or, some understanding of what that looks like.
Which is one of the reasons when we're doing our assessments, we ask for a network map. And it doesn't have to be down to every little thing. Give me a general idea.
Yeah.
Where things are and how things are connected so we can disconnect and do all of those things. I mean, there's a lot in your lead up so that you have the process to identify what's going on and figure out how bad it is.
Yeah. I had a prospect a few weeks ago, and I went and talked to them, and they already had an IT company. And I asked them, I said, so you have a cloud server? And they said, no, we have a physical server. I'm like, okay, that's fine. What roles does your server do? What functions does it do? What is it there to do? And he said, what are my options?
That's a good way to do it. Let me look for things that sound familiar. I'll let you know.
Yeah, I thought that was hilarious. What are my options?
Mm-hmm.
No, I don't know, but you can start naming stuff and I'll tell you if it sounds familiar.
Yeah. Hey, it works. Whatever works, I can get the information out of you, right? But that's where having a document that I could just hand to you and you would have a good idea.
Yeah, just something simple like, what is this thing supposed to do?
Mm-hmm. And it's this blind trust. And there's, everybody assumes that it's easy to do. And it really is frustrating in healthcare. It's kind of like I walk in and I have a weird rash on my back and an odd cough and my right eye is swollen. I want you to give me medication right now for whatever I have. You don't get to do any tests. You don't get to check anything. I need you to fix it, and I need the fix to be immediate so that I can get back to work.
You obviously ate broccoli.
I have my issues with cherries. Another story. But the idea that you don't have a plan in place and you haven't asked IT, you're just planning on calling them. But you haven't asked them, are they prepared for you to do that? What happens if something happens over the weekend and you don't have weekend service? What do you do? Are you waiting until Monday? That's an important question.
Mm-hmm.
What if it's a holiday? Are you waiting until Monday? There's a lot of things to ask. And that's why you go through this. So that was number 3 of our 9.
Yeah. Number 4, instructions for managing the security incident.
We call that a playbook. What are the parts that you're going to bring in? What is it you want to, who's in charge? Who's going to handle what? Who's got money when we need to get some cash? We need a bunch of pizza. I mean, it could be that simple.
Everybody's working late.
Yeah. I mean, particularly, IT security folks, they can be working for, not having sleep in days is not an uncommon thing, which is another reason I don't do that job anymore. I'm here if you need me. Call me when you've gotten things, if you got a question, let me know. But you go do that part. It's hard. So I need to know, who's your lawyer? How do you start a claim? Oh, cyber insurance will cover it, which I had a great conversation about cyber coverage. Company got a quote for $8,000 a year for cyber coverage. They filled out the questionnaire, the application, and that application, they said they weren't doing some of the things, and their quote went from $8,000 to $23,000.
Wow.
After they completed the application and told the truth about what they had going on.
Mm-hmm.
So, not pretty. So, assuming that you've got the coverage still, how do you start a claim? Are you supposed to work with certain vendors? There's a lot of things that you need to know just to manage it as a manager. And I'm going to wager that you're not planning on managing all that for them.
Nope, not me.
Okay, this is another thing that people are like, I don't understand why you ask about these things. Where are we at? Number 5.
Yep. Creating and maintaining a list of assets, such as computer systems and data, so that you can prioritize when responding to a security incident.
You have to determine the importance of the systems. And what we'll say, well, which ones are the most important? Well, it's this one right here. Are any of the others required to be in place first before that one? Well, I don't know.
Yeah. They always tell me they're all important. My favorite is where is the data? I don't know.
Just on my computer, but it's not on my computer.
Yeah. It's in the cloud. Okay, but where? I don't know.
I don't
The
know.
cloud. Which cloud provider? I don't know.
Yeah. But I mean, so many people are in that position. They truly don't know. And it's because they don't have the documentation that they should have from their whoever's in charge of IT. They don't vet the vendors in a way that would let them have that as part of their deal to have the documentation that they need. They don't even know to ask the question.
Mm-hmm.
That is where the problem is, and that's why we have things like the Price Act Bootcamp. Somebody needs to know what questions to ask or have someone they know to call to make sure those questions are asked.
Yeah. Or do like I do sometimes when I'm in a situation where I'm not fully aware of the process I should be following or something I should be doing. I'll just say, is there something I should have asked that I did not? And almost always the person will be like, oh yeah, you probably should have asked this, or you probably should. I mean, they don't offer the information. They figured if you wanted to know it, you'd ask.
Mm-hmm.
But every time I've ever said, well, what should I have asked that I didn't? There's usually one or two.
Yeah, we should add that to the end of all of our interviews with clients. Hey team, when you listen to this podcast, add that to the list. I think we may already have it though. But anyway, there is a reason we do a thing called business impact analysis and look at the criticality of the applications you use. And so many times people will say, well, I got to have my EHR. Great. That's all you got to have. That's all I got to have. And I swear I've been in these situations. I kid you not. All I need is the EHR. That's all we're going to worry about. I only want you to worry about the PHI. Check. Done it. Doing it. You worry about everything else. Draw that line. I'm good with that. In fact, I like it if we have a line because then it narrows everything down. But then when you have an actual incident and you switch over to the cloud backup of your EHR, it is slow, we know, because your pipe is slow and you're changing your traffic patterns, but you still have access to it. Yay, you're up and running. So while you're down because of this incident, then you're like, well, I don't have QuickBooks.
I got payroll.
I got payroll to do. I got people to pay. You didn't tell me to worry about that.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to know how critical everything is. How long can you go without it? That's the question. And don't assume that it'll be back up tomorrow morning. No. You should plan to be down, 15 days now, I think they say, maybe longer, 15, 20 days, without normal access. What is important? And you got to have a list of that so that when you do call IT and David does come in and he's following his plans, he needs to know what order things are as far as sometimes they are dependent upon each other. I always love that. If I bring this one up, but it gets data from that one over there and that one over there isn't up and running, really need to focus on that one over there first.
Yeah.
All right, so that's number 5. Have a list and know what the priorities are and where things are. That's why we ask for that when we're doing assessments.
Yep. All right, number 6. And this is going to sound a little bit similar to number 3. But number 6 is conduct a forensic analysis to identify the extent and magnitude of the security incident. So number 3 talked about the scope of the security incident. Now we're talking about the extent and magnitude of the security incident, but we're also digging really deep. We're talking about forensics here, not just, hey, what all's not working.
Yeah. So number 3 is what's going on and how bad is it?
Mm-hmm.
Who's going to make those determinations? Who's going to deal with it in the heat of battle?
Yeah. Who all do we need to get involved? Who should we call and wake up?
Right. We're dialing 911 and all we're wanting to do is respond to the immediate incident. There's a car accident. We need to get everybody to the places where they need to be looked at and get everybody stabilized. Right? And then they do an investigation. The investigation doesn't start when the ambulance is there.
Mm-hmm.
So the ambulance, they get there, the first responders, there's a reason they're called first responders. Maybe that's what we should start calling them. You have your first responder team, and then you have your investigative team. But it's the same thing of saying, look, there is an incident, and train wreck, car wreck, whatever you want to call it, most of the time somebody's going to use that word. The wheels fell off, whatever kind of accident, and there's damage, and the ambulance and the first responders are there trying to figure out enough of what's happened to save people, to save the equipment, to save whatever's happening. You got two different things: save property, save lives. Obviously, one takes priority.
Mm-hmm.
That's your first responders. That's what they identify and determine the scope. But then you have the investigators to figure out, okay, what really did happen? And, what was the overall blast radius of this thing?
Yep.
So that's your CSI part.
Well, that brings us into number 7, which is the part that everybody loves to do. Is report the security incident to the appropriate internal and external entities.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So this is where we're talking about calling like the legal departments, the local FBI, cyber task force field office, any kind of federal or state regulatory authorities, maybe OCR.
Yeah.
So those types of folks. And we've already talked about laws that are asking you, in air quotes, to contact them within 48 hours of an incident.
Mm-hmm. They just want to know an incident has happened and what you know about it. That's the one we just talked about with Circia.
Cicada.
Circa. Anyway, where CISA wants to know so that they can look for new active attacks. And that's immediate. Whereas OCR, you don't have to let them know as quickly as you do some of the other entities like the FBI or legal departments, or, you got to know, though. You got to have a plan. Mm-hmm. Who's going to decide what the reporting is? Who's going to do the reporting? Who handles the reporting to law enforcement versus the legal regulatory entities? They're two separate things. They're very much the same but different as far as the urgency. And I think that gets back to a lot of the forensic analysis, and the investigation starts to tell you who to call. Ghostbusters. All right. So you gotta know what that is, and that's not something you want to figure out on the fly. Trust me, it is not pretty when people are having to figure that out on the fly.
Mm-mm.
No. So,
all right,
go.
Number 8. So almost at the end now. Whew, stop sweating. Processes for collecting and maintaining evidence of the security incident. So now you were looking at things like log files and potential like registry keys within the operating system and other artifacts like that.
Yes.
So you can determine what was accessed during the security incident. So how deep did the rabbit hole go?
Mm-hmm. And you got to follow it till you hit a brick wall.
Mm-hmm.
But it is important.
Yeah, this is one of those things where they tell you if you can't prove it, it's assumed that it was accessed.
Mm-hmm. If you can't, within reason, be able to make that argument that a reasonable, knowledgeable person would say, yeah, you're probably okay.
Yep.
But you also need that for the investigations that are going to happen later, the regulatory requirements. And, if something comes up 6 months from now, you may have to go back to that to go, wait a minute, we looked at that before. What did we see then?
Yeah. And let me go ahead and give you a warning. If you don't learn anything else today, go check to make sure you actually have log files being created now.
That's a good one. And not just log files that are being created, but understand how big they are. How much is in them.
Yeah.
Because there's a thing in Windows where, yes, it's creating log files, but it's only the last 2 or 3 hours.
Mm-hmm.
That's not going to be helpful. And you need to get them at the beginning so that if they are purging things, you're getting the data when everything started, not at the end. Get them as soon as you can. So that is, you need a procedure and someone in charge of that. And that someone probably is going to need multiple different kinds of documentation. You need somebody tracking the timeline. You need somebody documenting the meetings and creating general meeting notes of the things that need to be documented. And you're going to need somebody that's responsible for the technical documentation. You know, it keeps going, but that's its own thing. You don't just go, yes, we'll document it. Moving along.
Yep. But definitely check those log files. I've been involved in investigations before where I go in and I start to try to pull log files and they're not any because somebody either turned it off or it never got turned on, depending on the type of solution. Because some of these will say, hey, if you want them, let us know. Otherwise, we're going to leave it off.
Mm-hmm. Well, and you have the ones where, yes, it's turned on, but it saves 100 meg worth of data.
Yeah. Not very helpful.
That's what, maybe 20 minutes on.
Yeah, depending on what it is.
Yeah.
But yeah, all that stuff is, and these are things you have to know way in advance.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you've got to make these adjustments so that you have, for example, 30 days worth of log data, you can't do that when the incident is going on. It's too late.
It's just too hard. So have a plan of some sort.
Mm-hmm. And this is where your tabletop exercises come in. Because if you go through one of these, you're like, oh, wait a minute. We can't pull log files past 2 hours. Glad we figured that out. Let's go and fix it.
And the log files come from many systems.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you got your firewalls or your UDMs or whatever systems that are controlling the access, all of those. And then you've got the actual application servers. And then you've got the servers that are managing network access. And you got, there's a lot.
Mm-hmm. Sure enough. And then lastly, number 9, you should have a process for conducting regular tests of the security incident response process. How about that?
That's one of your faves.
Yeah. So everything we just talked about, test it.
At least try some of it.
Test it and test it again.
Mm-hmm. If you say, oh, David has my backup, I shouldn't worry about it. What does that mean David's also doing with the backup? Testing it, maybe?
You would hope. However, there's a difference between testing the backup and testing the recovery.
That's right.
So, I mentioned one time not long ago, a few months ago, I was at a conference talking about that. And I made that exact comment. And I saw people writing stuff down and making text messages and phone calls. And one guy came up to me afterwards and he's like, this was a CIO. He's like, I've never thought about that. I always ask, did you test the backups? And they're like, yeah, backup's running fine. But I never asked to test the recovery portion of it. He's like, we will be doing it from now on.
Yeah, that's your line that you always use. You don't pay for backup, you pay for recovery, restore.
Yep.
And boy, does that change the mindset when you see that click in people's... I have watched you say it. I know it's coming, so I watch people to see.
Which one's more important? The fact that you have a duplicate copy of your data or the fact that you can actually get to the duplicate copy of your data?
Or my favorite is also, yes, we have the backup. The backup gets tested. We can restore it. What are you going to restore it on? Crickets.
Mm-hmm.
So you got to have a plan for that too.
Yep.
So there you go. That is the 9 that are covered in the newsletter. And they end this section the playbooks and all of those things that we always talk about. I mean, you have to have the master, and then you say, well, this is the parts we're going to use if this happens, and this is the parts we're going to use. And those are the playbooks that tell you, don't get caught up in all the other stuff, focus. And the points that I captured there, while each security incident has its own set of facts, note to self, they are all different. Two different ransomware attacks are not the same and require a well-tailored response. Regulated entities should develop a process for security incidents that commonly occur.
Mm-hmm.
For example, you might have a specific process for responding to a ransomware attack, and other processes for responding to insider malicious activity, cyber attacks from hackers, and phishing attacks. Specific processes addressing common types of security incidents can improve workforce members' understanding of what to do and the regulated entity's speed in responding to these incidents.
Yeah. I mean, I can think of 5 playbooks you should have, and just so happen they coincide with the hiccup, guys.
Isn't that interesting how that works?
Yep.
We also recommend having one for natural disaster, facility kind of disasters.
Yeah, like the toilets overflowing.
Yeah. People don't realize how plumbing can be so dastardly.
I know. That reminds me, I was in the bank last week, and I actually got in trouble for recording an incident in the bank. But as I was sitting in one of the offices, I hear water splashing, and I'm like, "What is that?" And I turn around and look, and there's water coming through the ceiling tiles, splashing all over the floor. And I was like, "What is going on?" And then after about 30 seconds, the ceiling tiles start falling because they're just soaked.
Yeah.
And this guy comes running out with this little small trash can. They're like, "That is not going to catch all that water." And anyway, somebody finally turned the water off, and then somebody walked over to me and said, "You cannot record anything into the bank. It is strictly prohibited to record in the bank." I'm like, darn, that was going to be a good one too.
Yeah. Well, can I give it to you and then later we come back to it?
Yeah. I was like,
it's evidence.
Use this for my incident response talk.
Yeah. I know. And when those ceiling things go, people don't understand. It's like they like plaster around whatever they land on.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like goo that just glues itself to whatever they land on.
Yeah. But it was a mess, and it only leaked for about maybe a minute. I mean, it wasn't that long, but it made a mess in that 1 minute.
Yeah, and it's one of those things, and I love the story where somebody told us a story that there was one of those, you're in an office building, right? So you've got a plan for all of your stuff, but when your neighbor's neighboring office has a plumbing problem that causes it to run water all weekend long, unimpeded, it's going to come over to your office, guaranteed, because they touch. And an actual, we'll say a clinician who's in charge comes in first and finds the mess, but didn't want the shoes to get wet. So reaches over and grabs a stack of medical records and lays them down to walk on in the water.
That's nice.
Yeah, that was a thing. So you need to even have a plan that if you come in and you see water in the floor and you have on new shoes, then move away. Call somebody. Don't use the first piece of paper you find. No. All right.
There you have it, folks. 9 incident response procedures and a whole lot of things to think about.
That you should consider.
You should consider it.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm not telling you to do it, but if I was you.
Yeah. If I was you. So, and here's the thing is, we know you don't know what you don't know. And so many people read this and they think, well, that's for bigger companies, or that's, for somebody else to handle.
Mm-hmm. Or it sounds complicated.
Yeah.
So, which, I mean, it can be, but you can't just say, I'm not going to do this because I don't understand how to do it.
Yeah, I mean, they make me show up for our own little tabletop exercise reviews on a regular basis, and I'm like, what? I don't want to be here. But we have found areas where we're able to create that business continuity, a few things to make sure, that we have better business continuity and that we're able to be there for our customers. Because just like you, if there is a big problem in the area and hurricanes or, any of those kind of things, we could have several people impacted.
Mm-hmm.
And you're counting on us to be able to be there and not just worry about us. And that's a big part of, in healthcare, you need to understand that the patients are counting on you to be there.
Yep.
And guess what? The practices are counting on us to be there. So you're in the chain when you're in healthcare. It'll all lead back to patient care.
Yep.
Which is perfect segue.
Perfect segue. All right, folks. Thanks for listening. Join us next week for another amazing podcast episode. Remember to share us out, man. Just, pass us along.
Yeah. They tell two people, you tell two people.
Yeah. It's like you was in college. Just pass it along. All right, folks. Thanks again. And remember, HIPAA's not about compliance. It's about patient care.
You've been listening to the Help Me with HIPAA podcast, hosted by Donna Grindle and David Sims. The show created to help you with HIPAA. For more information or to ask us a question, visit our website at helpmewithhipaa.com. Neither Donna Grindle or David Sims are attorneys, and they do not offer binding legal advice concerning regulatory compliance. The information in this podcast should not be relied upon or construed as legal advice in any way. Consult your attorney for legal advice concerning compliance with HIPAA regulations.